Salim wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. InsyaAllah hari ini kita ada Prof Dr Hafidzi untuk cakap tentang Muslim di Asia Tenggara. So this is basically our monthly series of kuliah based on Rank Corporation punya research building moderate Muslim. So we trying to ambil dia punya gist dan discuss dengan kita punya pandangan sendiri lah. So bermain pada pandangan orang and Datuk punya idea insyaAllah. Objektif dia adalah untuk bagi Muslim, kita faham peranan Muslim. Here they define it as moderate Muslim. So moderate Muslim punya idea lah. Of course we have different idea of moderate Muslim. Muslim is moderate anyway, so why you have to define it that way kan?
Berserti.
Yeah, but okay, and secondly untuk fahami cendekiawan yang bukan Islam punya pandangan tentang Muslim, and we make it our own pandangan lah, macam our own view. Sebab ini adalah daripada non-Muslim punya research. And thirdly, untuk fahami fikrah yang kita boleh ambil pakai so that we can improve ourselves as Muslim and in general and organisation as a whole lah, insyaAllah. So hari ini Prof akan kupas terus tentang Muslim di Asia Tenggara and for about 40 minutes or 1 hour insyaAllah, and then we have discussion or anyone on Facebook Live kalau ada boleh nak tanya soalan apa-apa, I think Prof boleh handle insyaAllah. So
with the help of our enlightened scholars.
So insyaAllah, over to you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. In a very good morning. Addressing the issue of Muslims in Southeast Asia. Of course, Muslims are unique in many parts of the world, especially when you see from the cultural context. Now, from the context of Aqidah, we are one ummah.
Assalamualaikum, Dr. Hafidzi. Can you just give us a brief profile of your whatever?
Sorry, I didn't do that.
Maybe Farina can.
I haven't prepared any, I'm sorry.
Okay, it's okay. Yeah, I'm okay. You do it for me or I'll do it
Can
myself?
you do it please?
Okay.
So that I won't miss any important information.
I'm a social activist, the chairman of My Care Humanitarian Care Malaysia, and doing some, shall I say, part-time activities on humanitarian aspects, as well as since understanding the history of it is impertinent, so I did some research and have written a few books in the context of Muslims in Southeast Asia. Basically, as a social activist, I am a member of the Pertubuhan Ikram Malaysia and one of the central committee member, the chairman of Pembelaan Umat Sejagat, so dealing with the ummah in the universal context. When we say ummah, it's not exclusive to Muslims, it is inclusive to humankind in the whole aspects. Okay, basically that's me. Academically, I'm working and teaching at University Putra Malaysia in the field of plant protection in the Faculty of Agriculture. Okay, I think that's enough. Because I'm no expert in the area, we are just sharing our thoughts and our views based on our activities and also engagement with the society at large. Now, coming back to the issue of Muslims in Southeast Asia, like I said, in the cultural context, Muslims are unique everywhere. But when we say, or when we look at this from the theological aspect, of course, there's only one ummah. But having differences in cultural practices should not be a barricade or a barrier for Muslims to come together. And in fact, in the context of humanities, we are one as a mankind. So now, coming or focusing on Muslims in Southeast Asia, let's look at Southeast Asia in the geographical context. So that's the geographical context. And it's quite recent. The the terminology or the name that is ascribed to this part of the world actually began quite recent, during the Second World War or immediately after that. And it comprised of political entities that may not have much difference when it comes to the historical perspective, especially during the period of colonization. We may have more in common before that period, in the first and the second century, even before the coming of Islam. And the coming of Islam to this part of the world sort of overlaps, or there's not much time lapse between the advent of Islam in the context or in the sense of the establishment of power centers and the coming of the explorers, so-called Western exploration, which brought about the colonization after that. So in the geographical context, Southeast Asia comprised of now 10 nations. The latest addition is Timor-Leste, of course, which was previously part of Indonesia. And in the context of our discussion today, we are more interested on the cultural context. When I say cultural context, we refer to the religious factor. And this area, which I confine within that boundaries, they are sort of affiliated to each other when it comes to the religion of Islam. So in the cultural context, we refer to this area as Nusantara, or the Malay world, or the Malay archipelago. Now, that's why we always sense that Islam is the major religion in this area. But I will show you later on that we are in fact a minority. If we look at it from the perspective of Southeast Asia, the geographical context. And this is quite amazing later on when we see that, okay, I did some research, just read through of the vital statistics of each countries. And these are the picture of Muslim minority beside Malaysia, Indonesia, Brunei, and Singapore. So you minus these 4 countries, you have Thailand, the Philippines, Myanmar, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos. And Muslims comprise of a very insignificant minority. And that brings us to the reality that Islam or Muslims in this part of the world is not actually the majority or even a significant minority. Of course, when you add up the population of Malaysia and Indonesia in particular, then it may comprise about 50%, or not even 50%, not even 50%. In the context of the whole region. Okay, so that's why sometimes it is quite misplaced when we refer to the interests of the Muslims in Thailand and in Philippines, especially in the past. We always see it from the point of trying to establish an autonomous region. That used to be the language of the past. We are all very interested in such a narrative. We want to build an independent state out of South Thailand, for instance, the southern Philippines, for instance, Sulu and Mindanao. But we seldom hear such narratives nowadays, because Muslims in this part of the world, they have come to the reality that the best solution is to integrate. Is to integrate and to engage. that should be the language now and in the future.
If I may interrupt.
Sure.
Is that a bad thing to integrate?
No. Okay, maybe we'll come to that later. Okay? But let's look at the historical reality. And this is quite surprising when we come to understand how Islam arrived to this part of the world. It's not Malacca. It's not the insular. It's not the Greater Sunda Islands. We always focus on Java, Sumatra, Peninsula Malaysia, Tanah Melayu as the place where Islam started. Actually, it is not. Islam arrived very early, perhaps 200 or 300 years after the demise of Rasulullah SAW. Came in the form of trading, came in the form of exploration, Arab traders, and of course da'i or preachers. They came very early on, but it is not documented officially because it did not lead to the birth of nation states or kingdom. The arrival of nation states and kingdom came very much later when you talk about the Sultanate of Kedah, which started around 12th century. And then the establishment of Islam in the form of Islamic laws in Kuala Brang, Terengganu, that comes to about 1302 or the early 14th century. And even much later in Malacca, 1404, with the embrace of Islam by the first Sultan of Malacca, Parameswara. Although there have been an earlier community that lives in that part of the world, they were saying that there have been there were residents in those areas as early as the early 13th century. But Islam first arrived in the northern part of Southeast Asia. When you talk about Tanah Sri, we talk about Patani, you talk about Singgora or Sofla, in today's context, Terengganu, Kelantan and Kedah. This is the place where Islam first arrived. And even Champa. Now, what is Champa? Champa is in Indochina, the coastal area of Vietnam today. Those are the birthplace of Islam in this region. And surprisingly, when we compare that with the current statistic, the places where Islam first arrived, set foot, those are the places where Muslims are the minority. Okay? So, it is sort of a, how shall I say, something that a discrepancy. Yeah? Anomaly. It's an anomaly. Yeah? So, when we talk about the arrival and also the engagement with early Muslims, these are the areas when Islam first touched base. Yeah? Okay. Now, a lot of this discussion revolves around history, which I don't want to go into, but you can have a look at it later on. Yeah. Okay, like I said, early civilization centers were in Indochina, the Kra Isthmus, north of Kedah and Kelantan. As an early contact with Islam and paved the way for the birth of Muslim Sultanate in Kedah, Kelantan, Patani, Singgora, which is the present day Songkhla. Patani, the old name is Langkasuka, yeah? And when it turned Muslims, somehow the name changed to Patani. That was how the Arab ascribed it or described it. And all the way southward from Champa to Terengganu and Ujung Tanah, Johor. These are the areas where Islam first come to exist in this part of the world. And then later on, the inroads of Islam into the Greater Sunda Islands and Sumatra, Java through the works of the saints, Wali Songo, yeah, by way of ancestry and tutelage can be traced back to Champa. Champa actually first came in contact with Islam, even much earlier, from China, from way of China. Yeah. So much of this is a discussion on history, which we can look at that later on. Now, of course, the topic for today's discussion is moderate Muslim. I wouldn't want to use that term because you can argue when you have moderate Muslims, you have extreme on both sides, right? I would say middle ground. And the word that Allah SWT described in the Quran is wasati. And there's a famous ayat that goes with that. What was the ayat? Prof? A'udzubillahi minasyaitonirrajim. وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ وَيَكُونَ الرَّسُولُ عَلَيْكُمْ شَهِيدًا. And verily we have وَجَعَلْنَا أُمَّةً وَسَطًا, we have shaped you or molded you to be a wasati. Wasati means well balanced. It's not skewed to the left or to the right. So that you will become a witness unto mankind. Now, witness doesn't mean that you are superior in the whatever physical features, but superior in the terms that you have been given the guidance so that you can lead others. You can lead others to the correct, right, true and true path. And so that the Prophet Rasulullah SAW can be a witness on you. That shows that being a Muslim, you are being given this huge responsibility to lead mankind. So whenever we talk about what we focus today as the moderate Muslim or the middle ground Islam, we are talking about providing a viable leadership for the whole of mankind. Okay, now this is what the composition of Muslims in Southeast Asia appears today. As a result of the formation of nation states post-colonial period, I'm just describing some of the situations they are facing here. Now we have a multiracial country with a Malay Muslim majority, and that is us, Malaysia. We have a city-state with a Malay Muslim minority, that is of course the city-state of Singapore. And then we have a small Muslim state ruled by the royalty, of course Brunei. And then a republic with a Muslim majority, some say 95%, some say it's down to 88%, whatever. With such diversity due to no official sanctions or adopted enshrined in the constitution, like in Malaysia. Islam is well protected by the constitution, down to even the mazahib. So that's why we have a very huge hoo-ha about differences of school of thoughts. But Indonesia, they don't have such a situation. Albeit they are a Muslim majority, but with such diversity. And then Muslim minority and marginalized in Thailand, and the Philippines in particular, used to be marginalized, but now they are trying to empower themselves by way of integrating themselves in the larger society, the society at large. And the long-time single out and persecuted Muslims, of course we are looking at Myanmar today, the Rohingyas, and the Muslim minority due to systematic persecution in the past, but slowly being recognized. I'm referring to Vietnam, Laos, and also Cambodia. They used to be ill-treated in the past, but now we are seeing Muslims are making some progress, and especially in Cambodia, maybe Prof Abang have a lot of experience in that respect. Okay, now how do we place ourselves, strategically place ourselves as an ummah with such a diversity? How do we give an impact or become impactful in the sense that we can provide the guidance and also the leadership that is very much wanting today? The issue is our presence felt, or are we looked upon as a threat for instance, in Myanmar, in the extreme form, the Muslims in Myanmar, especially the Rohingyas, they were not recognized. They were not recognized. They are stateless, and they are being looked upon with such enmity, and being treated as a threat to the survival of the Buddhists. Although this is not a view that is subscribed by all, but some of the extreme communities, they consider Muslims as a threat to the point that they exterminate them. That's why the genocide is going on right now. Yeah. So, to assert our presence, and the measure of presence, looking at the various how shall I say, the spectrum, from the majority Muslims to a minority, how we can make our presence felt. Yeah? The measure of presence is not that you being the majority or a significant minority or minute or marginal minority. How we can come up with a formula that we can act as an ummah in the context of the present situation in Southeast Asia. The ability to coexist and become functional in the larger community, be that you are the majority or otherwise. Yeah? These are things that we can actually discuss and also exchange, so that the whole Muslim Ummah in Southeast Asia can benefit from it. So how we look at this issue will spell the difference between a contributing segment completely integrated or sidelining yourself to be a distinctive non-integrating community that eventually you become sidelined. We have not been able to detach ourselves from such a narrative. That we are a majority, how we should treat others, that we are now a minority, and how we should behave in such a context. So we need the fiqh, the understanding, the knowledge, the higher knowledge, how to carry ourselves in a multi-religious society. And what I mean by multi-religious society is it does not refer here to whether you are a majority or a minority. As long as there are people from different religious background that lives together, then we consider that as a multi-religious society. In fact, if you look at our history, the glorious past of Islam, you look at Andalus, you look at even Baitul Maqdis, even Medina, the nascent Islamic state, the very first one, Baghdad, all the centers of civilization in the past. Now these centers of civilization, the early Muslim kingdom, they are all multi-religious. You will never find a society or a center of civilization whereby there's only Muslims. That is not the feature of an Islamic empire. It is comprising of a multitude of people of different background, be it religious or ethnic group. So, how do we carry yourself in almost every situation? Number one, you cannot isolate your community, or in the case you being the majority, you isolate others by your words, attitude, the way you carry yourself in the larger society. I think this is the biggest challenge we are facing. Yeah? In Malaysia, whether consciously or unconsciously, a large segment of the society consider themselves as superior. That should not be done. If you look at the first community of the faithful, Rasulullah and the Sahaba, they do not carry themselves as being superior to others. In fact, when Rasulullah first arrived, after forging the brotherhood between the Ansar and the Muhajir, Rasulullah meet with the whole community, regardless of who they are, the Jews, the different tribes, the non-Muslims of different different ethnic groups. They are all called up, and then they come up with a constitution, Sahifah Madinah, which is considered to be the first constitution that is fair to every segment of the society. So that would not happen if Rasulullah and the community of believers or the faithful consider themselves as the Tuan. In fact, Rasulullah is not the Tuan pun. He doesn't belong to Madinah. He actually came from Mecca. He was invited, and but the people of Madinah, they consider him and appoint him as the de facto leader, because they see that Rasulullah, even the non-Muslims see him as one who can bring justice to the society. Now, when you are a minority, now I would like to share some of the thoughts of Dr. Sheikh Rashid Ghanouchi, whereby he says that the Muslim minority all over the world, they should not be fighting for political agendas. They should blend themselves in the larger society and contribute in a positive manner. In the past, we always say that we need to assert our political rights, but that only brings that will only brings, how shall I say, anxiety to the society. They look at you as one who would try to assert some of your values. But it is better that you blend into the society. This is according to the views of Rashid Ghanouchi. You should blend in the society and try to contribute in the areas of science, in the areas of technology, in the areas of administration, so that they can see that you contribute in ways that will benefit the society at large, rather than coming up with your own minority agendas. You can do that in the larger community, and it's working, because we are seeing some of the major cities, the larger cities in the US, in Europe, even in London, they elected a mayor from among the Muslims. And due to the positive attitude of the Muslims, just about a couple of years ago, the mayor of New York announced that the two Eid, Eid al-Adha and Eid al-Fitri, should be announced as a public holiday for schools. So they are making progress in that area, becoming a part of the American society, just like the Irish, just like the Germans, just like the English, who were earlier comers, of course, apart from the indigenous people. So the principles of the Sharia must be applied according to the maqasid to be achieved. This is something that is being largely expressed nowadays, and also being debated hotly. We should start to apply the principles of the Sharia, rather than fighting for the implementation of Sharia. Now, when you fight for the implementation of Islamic law, that it is not a non-starter. To me, it's a non-starter. You should be applying the principles of the Sharia, which is universal in values, which cuts across racial boundaries, cuts across religious boundaries, in order for the others to subscribe to your values, rather than forging with issues that is exclusive for the Muslims. Therefore, the fiqh of realities, these are the things that the Muslim Ummah must equip themselves. The fiqh of realities, walking. We have a problem here, because when it comes to the implementation of how to carry yourself in a present modern society, we tend to look at the classical texts. texts that were penned maybe 500 years ago or even older, which were formulated at that period, which may be relevant at that period, during the time of Imam Al-Ghazali, or Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, or Imam Nawawi. So those are very relevant to that situation in that circumstances. But when you try to apply them to the letter, to what is happening today, then we will have problems, because what we are facing today certainly is different than what they have actually experienced in the past. This is what Almarhum Buya Hamka said, that the Quran does not, the Quran stop in the form of text, the textual form. Quran stops there. There will be no more revelation. There will be no more wahyu. Quran is completed. But when it comes to human experience, situations that human being will face, there is no end to it. We will keep on facing new situations, new problems that need to be overcome. That's where the ijtihad comes in. So we need to exert our understanding of how to apply the principles of Sharia, the principles laid down by the Quran and the Hadith, in order to tackle modern day situations and problems. So this is one thing that Muslims must try to acquire, the fact of realities, understanding the modern realities, the present day realities, and in fact prepare for the future, so that we are relevant, we remain relevant, and we can remain as we can be looked upon and treated as a community that contribute positively in all fields of that is relevant to the society. The fact of priorities, this is another aspect, the understanding of how to prioritize things. Even at this day, I want to give a very glaring example. When there was a water crisis, from time to time we are facing water crisis. This is happening in one university on Friday. You know, Friday is a day that people go for Jum'ah prayer, and there's no water to take the wudu. So the Jabatan Bekalan Air, the Department of Water, supply tanks, lori tangki, so that people can take wudu there. And I've been observing, even in the time of crisis, the Muslims are taking wudu as if they are taking wudu at home. No. Even when you take wudu, when you take ablution, you shouldn't be wasting. There should not be, you should not waste water. Dia tak boleh membazir. Now, you do that in terms of when you are facing with the crisis. So that's how good we are at applying fact awlawiyat, or the fact of priorities. I came to learn about fiqh awlawiyat when I was in the US. That was about 30 years ago. There was one sheikh who explained what is fiqh awlawiyat, or the fiqh of priorities, in a language that every lay person can understand without much trouble. You are faced with two situations. You have, the time of salah comes, the call to prayer. And it is best for the Muslim to answer to the call of prayers and perform their prayers as early as possible. At the same time, you have the urge for the call of nature. You have to go to the toilet. So which one? Which one would you do first? Perform your salah or answer to the call of nature? Of course you will answer to the call of nature. That is big priorities. It's common sense. It's logical. You have to do it, because if you give priority to performing the salah, then you never know what you will end up with. Certainly you cannot pay attention to your salah. So that is fake priorities, fake of priorities, or fake awlawiyah. And we are seeing it, how the society is devoid of such understanding. They know fake wudu, to take wudu, to take ablution in the most perfect manner, according to the mazahib, the practice of Rasulullah sallallahu. That is in a normal situation. Even in a normal situation, you should not commit yourself to wastage. Yeah? But even when there's a crisis, there's not enough water, people cannot use their common sense, which is very logical, to save water so that others can also take their wudu. So at that time, when people were queuing to take their wudu, and it's time for the azan, and the khatib has started to deliver the khutbah, people are still queuing, and I raised my voice to the person who is taking their wudu, brother, please perform only the obligation. The obligation. What is the obligation? You just wash your face once, your hand once. You don't have to do the sunnah, washing your ear, yeah? Sipping water in your nose, and so on and so forth. So some people say, so which one is the obligation? So even that, they claim that no, they know the mechanism of wudu, but they do not know which one is the obligation, which one is the sunnah, yeah? The sunnah, yeah? Which is not the obligation. So that's number two. The fact of balance. The fact of balance is muwazanah. How we can perform and go through life in a balanced situation, not trying to overstress in some matters and then neglect the others. For instance, this is very recent, and we can all relate to this, the issue of the persecution of Rohingyas. People are being burned alive, people are being brutally murdered, being gang raped, and we see some of them were actually exaggeration, but there were genuine videos showing how most babies were being killed. Yeah? This is real. Yeah? And yet some Muslims, they used to, because of their experience facing with some Rohingya community here, isolated incidents, and they use that to say that they deserve it.
Yeah.
What is that? I mean, you have some bad experience, isolated incidents dealing with maybe one or two Rohingyas from the community, and you use that to base your judgment on what is happening. Yeah? They deserve the genocide. That is a very skewed understanding of what is happening. Yeah? Unbalanced, not balanced at all. That's why we need to have the understanding of how to lead a balanced, not just a balanced life, but a balanced view of things. Otherwise, we will become extreme. Yeah? The fact of dispute, this is another thing. Yeah? The fact of dispute or fact of ikhtilaf. How to differ. How to differ. And it is very clear when we look at the social media, we do not have an understanding, an inkling of how we should deal with differences of ideas. Not only we are different in the other physical features, the language, the skin color, the religion, even among us, even among the Muslims, we cannot appreciate that differences are tolerated. We start to attack each other, smear each other for one small dispute, and that shows how we carry ourselves in the society, that make us fail to actually show ourselves as an example into the society. So the fake of the middle ground. Right? So when we talk about the moderate Muslim, so-called moderate Muslim or middle ground society, we need the guidance of the scholars, yeah? Who have the global outlook yet not detached from the present local realities. Harmonious coexistence can be achieved, whether we are a minority and certainly as a majority. Yeah? The Muslims in our midst in the present scenario must spend more resources on what is the priority, yeah? What need to be addressed urgently, and not to overreact over issue that can trigger and spark opposite reaction. I want to relate. I want to relate a verse, an ayah from the Quran. This is from Surah An-Nahl, if I'm not mistaken. A'udzu billahi minasyaitonir rajim. Ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmati wal mau'izatil hasanah wajadilhum billati hiya ahsan. I think many memorize this verse. It is the bedrock of da'wah, the rules of engagement, how to call people to Islam. But it is applicable in every situation. It shows that in order for us to coexist, I call it the fact of coexistence, there need to be dialogue. And we need to build bridges. And the Quran, the term that is used is mawaddah fil qurba. So in this particular verse, call people to the ways of Allah with hikmah. Hikmah means wisdom. And then wal mau'izatil hasanah, civilized engagement, good and fair advice. Wajadilhum billati hiya ahsan. And this is the most amazing part. The verse call for you to practice, to have a lot of wisdom in presenting your views, your ideas, and also to engage in a civilized manner, to give good and fair advice. And the most amazing part is when you have to argue. Normally, when you have an argument, it's a heated one. Normally, when you are engaged in an argument, you become emotional. But even in this verse, Allah SWT says, you must engage in the most. When you engage in argument, do it in the most rational manner. Do it in the coolest manner. Now, in a way that is even better than hikmah. So, when you address the people, when you want to convey the message of Islam, you do it with wisdom. Now, when you have to argue with them, when there is a conflicting views, then you have to argue with them in ways that is better than when you call them. That is amazing. So that shows how important for us to lead the way in a form that is most acceptable. The time for us to quarrel and to brandish whatever weapons that we have as long ended. I want to show you an example here. In Kedah, this is not popularly documented, but there is a ruin, an excavation that revealed a very old building which is the same age of the Candi or the temples of Lembah Bujang. Now, this is recently discovered way back, just about 2000, in the year 2005, and based from the orientation and also the design of this building, they have come to the conclusion that this is the mosque, and it's the oldest mosque in Kedah and in fact in Southeast Asia. It is thought to be built in the 10th century. That means about 200 to 300 years after the demise of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, according to the historian of Kedah, the mosque is built in the midst of the temples, Candi. There are two temples nearby, flanked by two temples, and on the left, on the right, and there's a mosque in the center. And they have even concluded that the mosque was built with the aid and also the help of the local people, which were not Muslims yet. These mosques were built by the traders, the merchants, and also the preachers, the da'iyah, who came from time to time to trade and to engage with the local community. And it was told that with the permission of the Sultan, which was not a Muslim yet, because the first Sultan of Kedah that embraced Islam was Praong Mahawangsa, Sultan Muzaffar Shah, took on a Muslim name, Sultan Muzaffar Shah, and that was in 1136. 1136. This is about what year was it? About 200-300 years preceding that. So that shows how the kind of engagement, how they relate themselves, how they carry themselves in a predominantly Hindu Buddha society. The religion of the local, which definitely were not Muslims. It was what you call as syncretism, a combination of animism, Hindu and Buddha. But they were tolerated to the point that they were able to establish a mosque in their midst. That shows we can learn a lot from the earlier society. That's how Islam became accepted in this part of the world. And I want to share some of my experience. In my care, there's one staff. He is a Chinese, Brother Teo Ansiang. And he is very interested to work with my care. He's a Buddhist, a strict Buddhist. He wants to work with my care because he wants to convey the message of humanity to his Chinese community, basically the non-Muslim community, Chinese and Indians. And he is now our bridge with the community, our multi-racial community. He even wrote 2 books on Palestine, on Syria, on humanitarian issues in Rohingya, in Chinese, and now he is getting a lot of coverage in the press. China Press, Hsinchu, Nanyang. For the first time ever, for the past couple of years, we have been getting a lot of press coverage on the work that we are doing here. And certainly it has become a bridge. This is Brother Teo Ansiang. For example, you can see here, he is going from school to school. Sekolah Jenis Kebangsaan Cina, SRJKC. Sekolah Jenis Kebangsaan Cina. And he's been going from school to school, and he addressed the issue of humanitarian issues, particularly Palestine, Syria, and Rohingya. And he is very well received. Just imagine those people, our friends from the other communities, the Chinese and the Indians, they consider the Palestinian issue as a Malay issue. How come? How come? Even the Americans, the American public, the people in Europe, they have already treated Palestine as an international issue, as a humanitarian issue. But here in Malaysia, our non-Muslim communities, the Chinese particularly and the Indians, they consider that this is a Malay issue. How come? This is a very sad reality. That shows how we have failed. How we have failed to bridge the gap, how we have failed to implement the meaning and the understanding of the words that I have read just now. Ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmati wal mau'izati hasanah wajadilhum billati hiya ahsan. And to the point that Brother Teo Ansiang is so well versed that now he is going to the Islamic school. He is addressing our children in the Islamic schools, Muslim, Hira, Al-Amin, and he's going to those schools and talk to our children on Palestinian issue. And this is very amazing. When our kids were seeing a non-Muslim, a non-Malay, a non-Muslim who is so well versed on the Palestinian issue, better than they can address it. This is the way forward. Now, this is Brother Teo Ansiang, and he even wrote an article in the paper whereby he indicated some of the quotations made in the mainstream media associating Islam with terrorism. There's an attack in Marawi conducted by Islamist terrorists. There have been some threats of Islamic terrorists. The word Islamic terrorist has become a subject of his criticism, and he wrote an article, and then he put it up in the Facebook, and this is what he said. Media is responsible because they associate Islamist group as terrorists. They should not be using Islamists. They should be using terrorists, period. Because terrorism is never identified with any particular religious group. The misuse of terms has influenced Islam is equal to terrorists. So that's how the understanding, the sharing that we have with some of our non-Muslim friends has took them out from the perception that Islam is equal to Malay. Now they are fighting even harder than us in order to bring the issue to their community, bring the reality to them. And we are having this. We are having a dialogue. Is it tonight? Tomorrow. Whereby we are calling up a representative of the Buddhist group, KV Sun. He is the Secretary for the International Forum on Buddhist-Muslim Relations. And Josh Hong is a humanitarian activist who is a Buddhist. So we want to call up the communities, the non-Muslim community, to engage them and try to come up with a resolution on how to deal with the present situation of the Rohingya, and see how some of our Muslims reacted. They start to write provocative messages. Tell them that the Buddhists are doing this to our Muslim brothers. We are not there to reprimand them. We want to hear first. So that is the failure of our society. How can we take the lead and show that we are deserving to be ummatan wasata, the one who is fit to lead, the one who is fit to show the way. Even when we were sending humanitarian mission to Nepal, some of them even reprimanded us. Why are you helping them? They are 99% Hindus. That shows how narrow-minded the understanding of Islam that we are having today. And not surprising why some non-Muslims look upon us with frowns. They look upon us with enmity, because we are the ones who have that kind of perception on the humankind as a whole. We have so much went astray from the right or the correct understanding of Islam. So hopefully this will build inroads for us to engage with the community and bring harmony and also prosperity, because only through harmony and prosperity that we can function as a community. We must change the narrative from hatred, from trying to deepen the enmity nowadays, to start to understand each other, bridging the gap, and so on. So probably those are the things that I would like to express when it comes to the role of moderate or middle ground society in our country as well as in the region, Southeast Asia. Wallahu alam. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Basically, if you read from this research, the RANCOP research, they define moderate Muslim as those who are not extremists. Yeah, but in the context, the international society, they define moderate Muslim, at least in India, they define them as those who are not practicing Muslim. Like you don't have to wear hijab, you can drink alcohol, but you're still Muslim. So those are the good kind of Muslim that they like. But that is not the idea that I want here, inshallah. And I think it's amazing that you touched about the Rohingya issue, because that is the current issue that's happening near us. And it's sad to see that Muslim in Malaysia especially using Quran to support why they're not helping Rohingyas. They quote I think it's Surah Al-Rad, I think Allah won't help one nation until they change themselves, something. That is Al-Rad, right? So they think, so they kind of say that what's happening to the Rohingyas is because of themselves. So until they change themselves, Allah won't help them. So that is very sad and sick, actually. And I just can't believe what I see there. But of course, there are other good Muslims, inshallah, who are willing to help them. It's not just about the Muslim, because in Rohingya, in the Rakhine case, they are the Karen ethnic those are majority Christian, and they are just recently the Hindus are being chased away from their home too in Rakhine. So they just want the Rakhine area. So and because it's majority Muslim, so that's why it's closer to us. You know, majority Muslim here in Malaysia.
My response to that, these ideas came up because some people think they are more religious than others, holier than thou. I would like to quote what Sheikh Rashid Ghanouchi said. All of us have to become a better Muslim. Whether you are really good, abiding to the precepts of the religion, practicing Muslim, or one that is a nominal Muslim. All of us must improve. That's the way we should be treating each other. Help each other to implement and to live up to Islam, not by looking down upon others because I practice more than you, then I'm better than you. That's why that is happening to you, because you did not strive to change yourself like I did. So those are arrogant views. I think what Sheikh Rashid Ghanouchi said, all of us need to improve. That should be the way. And help each other. If you think that someone is so much lacking in his practice of Islam, help him. Help him. Not by looking down upon him. I mean, maybe he is weak on that aspect, but we are also weak on some other aspects that people may not know. You may be wearing hijab. Someone may not be wearing hijab, but he is not good in that aspect. But who knows, you are not good, not better than her in some other aspects. She might be much kinder than you. You may not be even concerned about your neighbors, but he's helping the community. So those are the things I think we need to address this from our young kids. We need to address it. We need to prepare them to live in the society, how to carry yourself in the society. Otherwise, they will grow up becoming arrogant, becoming they are better than others. Not even when they were treating non-Muslims, but even when they were treating fellow Muslims. That's what happened when we were saying the issues on Rohingya. These people, they deserve it because they are filthy.
Because they are uncivilized.
Uncivilized, uneducated. What sort of thing is that? Even when the issue of the what do you call that, incest, which is getting a lot of highlights nowadays. Father doing it on their daughters, right? The latest one, the father even committed it during Umrah. And then there were even people who dare say in the Facebook, it's okay because his daughter, rather than doing it on some other person.
That is how sick
it is better for the father to do it on the. That's how sick it is. And luckily he only sodomized the daughter. She is still a virgin. That sort of views came out from the public. A very sick public. I think we should be worried, extremely worried. People are being raped, being murdered, being chopped like anything, and they were saying they deserve it. La ilaha illallah.
Prof, anything?
Please, Dato' and Prof.
Prof is actually social science.
Oh yes, please.
He's the guy.
You'll be sitting here, but
I have several comments. First, of course, is the theme of the talk. It is rather too wide, Muslim di Asia Tenggara. You are talking as if the talk is framed or phrased in such a way that you are going to be giving us all the problems or the issues in Southeast Asia, when in fact your focus is very little, very small. The focus is on the divergence between theory and practice in actual life. And you could just simply say it is based on my observation in Asia, rather than giving examples, actually not really solid examples, but petty samples from all of the Southeast Asia. So that is my complaint as a professional anthropologist. I'm a social anthropologist, British trained. So we are very particular about titles, probably because of your earlier training in Islamic studies, you are less concerned about this. But social scientists are very particular about topics, how you phrase it. And I find that a bit disappointing. When I first saw the title, I mentioned indirectly to Farwina, this topic is a little bit broad for public consumption, and people get cheered, people are threatened, people run away because, and this is how it is something that we could lesson by your own webinar. Of course, if you want to talk about, this is my observation and analysis of what Islam is in Malaysia. It is a question of theory and practice. Theoretically, people seem to know that Islam is great, but in practice they don't even know that incest is totally wrong. It's haram. Yeah, Allah has given one chapter in the Quran just mentioning about what kind of relationship we have between a father and a mother. Yeah, a father and a daughter, a mother and son. It's already clearly stated. So I wish you could have just talk in in a little focused manner. I don't question your ability to give us your references, Islamic references, but I think you need to be a little focused in the talk because it's too broad. In fact, your talk is focused only on Muslims, theory and practice, or Islam in Malaysia, theory and practice. Don't talk so broad. Southeast Asia is a big topic.
Sure.
I'm a student of history. Any anthropologist who doesn't do history is not an anthropologist. Before we understand society, we must know history. And that's why I'm very particular. The moment you mention about Southeast Asia, I feel that you have disappointed, not me, but yourself. Because when in fact the real gist of your discussion is in the later part of your talk. You could have just focused on the example of Rohingya. Or incest in Malaysia. In fact, I posted something on incest in Malaysia in my Facebook. And the Malays were not very happy. They attacked me. And they turned to me as if I'm ignorant of what incest is. I'm very well trained in anthropology of kinship and family. Meaning, if you are doing anthropology, you don't know anything about family, human relation, incest, you are not an anthropologist. You should know why relations are very important in our actual life. Imagine if the world is disorder. Mak boleh bantai anak dan anak boleh bantai mak dan and I got fed up when Malays questioned me. Why are you so concerned about Malays? Why not about societies? The fact that I'm concerned about Malays is very simple. The Malays are supposed to be the leaders, Khalifah, Everybody is a Khalifah, but the Muslims are special, and they have failed. How can you lead Malaysia when you fail, even in your own family, a small unit, a small social unit, the family? Macam mana kita nak tumbuhkan family kalau bapa tak tahu itu anak dia dan anak tak salah anak lah. Kalau umur form 1 dah di course, I mean, what kind of child tell whether it's wrong or right at that age? Orang dah tua pun tak tahu hubungan macam mana yang dibenarkan. So there is something wrong with our society. Our society lacks the knowledge which they are supposed to know. Knowledge, basic knowledge, knowledge on human relations. Kita andaikan, oh nama dia siapa? Nama dia Farwina. Tapi rupanya Farwina ni I guess a nominal. Sorry. Ya, I'll pay. Nanti saya bayar.
Belanja.
Belanja. Kalau di Kedah saya boleh belanja instantly. Yeah. So I feel very sad. I feel like crying because people are so concerned about. Kenapa from fokus kat online saja? Kenapa orang bangsa lain kat Sarawak tak kisah? So I'm not concerned about them. I'm concerned about us because we have been specially chosen by Allah to lead the world. Macam mana kita nak jadi khalifah kalau hukum yang simple? So sorry to Teguran tu ikhlas lah. Dr. I wish you could just narrow down the whole discussion so that you become more focused and you get. You have so many examples. I know you because you are activist, and I appreciate that because I'm also an activist. Yeah, although I'm not very well known lah. Yeah, I cannot be too well known because Sarawak won't like it. Yeah. But I appreciate that. There are Malays who are like you who are very concerned. Ini bukan kegiatan yang berbahaya ni. Orang sekarang kalau nak aktivis ni kena ada ganjaran. Tak ada ganjaran siapa nak. So you are one of the crazy ones around. Yeah. So that's why I appreciate that. I come today to listen.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I tend to agree. We should narrow it down.
Narrow it down, please, because nanti maybe not here, but here, yeah, inshallah, I can always give feedback, and that is my own professional feedback. Narrow it down, focus, and don't be too broad. You can pick. You have so many issues, but inilah masalahnya kalau kita dah terlalu banyak knowledge, kita dah fokus tu susah. Yeah.
Thank you for the feedback.
Can I share something on a different issue? The first thing is you managed to cover history, how Islam comes to Malaysia. We're talking about 9th century.
Yeah.
Around 9th century. Islam started around 6th century, so there are 3 centuries gap. And Islam comes to Malaysia at an age where Islam is, the Muslims are down. The Muslims are down. There's so much confusion in the understanding, in the practice, and so on. That is the age that Islam comes to Malaysia. So what we receive in Malaysia is basically Islam which is adulterated. So the practice is only adulterated. Perhaps that should be understood. Secondly, knowing our problem now, we have so much problem from the extreme, from one end to the other end, and the people claiming to be in the middle nation and so on. I was attracted to your stress on the that you were saying on working on realities, which is very important. But unfortunately, most of our ulama are not interested in working, not interested in reality. At the most, if there is any study or any discussion like this, we are more interested in the rules and regulation, hukum and so on, and we're more interested in that. And on the one hand, on the other hand, a lot of people are doing studies and discussion which are very academic. One thing good about your presentation just now was you went down to the realities, to the issues at hand. You're able to put it in proper perspective. But the problem is most of the ulama are not doing that. So my question is, what can we do? What can we do? Because the majority of those involved in da'wah organization are not interested. Either they go to one extreme, they become so involved in the realities themselves. They become people involved in politics and economics, which devoid of direct Islamic rules. Or they go to the other extreme, they talk about Islam, devoid of realities. Now how can you in reality bring together? because these two groups are actually not talking to each other.
They're not talking to each other. Maybe we can look at the educational system, how the so-called ulama were trained, because most, if not all, they have gone through the traditional way, even in the universities. For instance, perhaps University Al Azhar, as an example, they were trained strictly in that discipline, which Prof Dr said that devoid of the realities, the present circumstances. That's why some of the more progressive, if we can use that term, progressive ulama scholars, like Dr. Yusuf Qaradawi, he even addressed issues of Islamic entertainment, that we need to have, we need to train film directors, we need to have economists who can address present economic problem. So what we need is an ulama who have this worldview that the solutions, the problems are very complex, and we need experts. And with the consultation with ulama, then we can come up with a viable solution to whatever we are facing now. But what we are doing today now is the ulama, the so-called ulama, they focus on the classical text, trying to resolve issues which is non-existent 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago. And then you have the economists, the politicians or whatever. They stay away from the guidance of the ulama. I mean, if you want to work according to the principles of the Quran and Sunnah, you need to have an understanding, a proper understanding of the text, the Quran and Sunnah. And definitely you need to work together with the scholars, the ulama, in order for you to understand how you can bring about a solution that is Islamically correct, based on Islamic principles.
You are a university lecturer, and assuming that our generation is past, we can't do very much, because we have, as you mentioned, the ulama who are on one hand not interested in realities, and there may be people on the other hand interested in realities but do not have sufficient knowledge of Islam to be able to chart out a proper way of doing things for the Muslim Ummah. We now have to look at the younger generation, particularly the Shabab, the youth. But unfortunately, the youth now, they don't read. They don't study, they don't like to study.
Not us though.
We initiated a few studies in Wami. Although, alhamdulillah, we managed to finish a few with extreme difficulty, because interest is not there. The interest to study is not there, and then the will to work hard is not there. So we have a situation where we see the older generation cannot be relied on now, and we have the younger generation who also cannot be trusted to do all this. What is left? What can we do, David?
Dr. Hafiz, Dr. Hafidzi, okay,
Yeah.
sorry. I actually, shukran since Abang brought the issue up just now, I would like to thank you because you have done your homework quite well actually. Despite, although your history was a bit too far. You have the methodology of Ibn Khaldun. Yeah, he is a legal expert. He's a jurist, dia hakim. Tapi what is special about Ibn Khaldun? He knows history. He says you can understand the society without understanding history, and you have done that. And back to the issue, the real issue that I want to raise again, because you mentioned it already. Just now we mentioned in the need, in our effort to understand the history of Islam. Although you didn't mention rightly, but I conclude that you are mentioning what the writing that you mentioned about the history of Islam, how the process took place, and especially the most important thing, the process of syncretism. Syncretism is a process whereby various religious elements, dari sin macam synthesis, antithesis, thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. So syncretism is from the word sin, and creed to kepercayaan. Sin is a process of the blending of religious elements into one. So the most important and special and unique thing about Asian religion is the process of syncretism, and that's why understanding Islam in Southeast Asia is very difficult. You are not only for people like you lah. You are actually special because you are from different discipline for that. And finally, you are plant protectionist. I think from your intimacy with plants too.
Scientific.
Your intimacy sangat intimate dengan plant tu. Dr. Hafidzi ni sedar dirinya dan posisinya di alam yang besar. So I think very important. Syncretism is a word that had been coined, telah dicipta oleh seorang Yahudi. Orang yang pandai-pandai di dunia ni memang orang Yahudi. If Ibn Khaldun had been a Jew, he would be even more popular.
Sure.
Even guru saya sendiri, Ernest Gellner, dia seorang Jew. Dia very serious Jew. Dia tak boleh jadi Muslim sembarangan kalau depan dia. Sebab he would insist you to be a good Muslim, be a real Muslim. Dia kata dia sentiasa quote from Ibn Khaldun because he is very impressed with Ibn Khaldun, the first sociologist of the world. Dia kata bukan Emil Durkheim ke August Comte, bukan. The first one was Ibn Khaldun, and he is very fond of Ibn Khaldun. Dia sebagai seorang Yahudi, and he keep me reminding me lah. So one day who knows, probably you will be another Ibn Khaldun. Betul. But I quite like your presentations about you mentioned the important word about religion and especially Islam in Southeast Asia, that it is very secret. That's why Islam kita cacar merbak. Kita pergi ke utara, orang nak kata dia pure sangat, rupanya dia masih tangas, kenyang lagi. Saya sini pun terkejut, masih dah. Ingat orang Sarawak saja yang suka glamour, bau-bau macam ni, rupanya orang utara pun sama juga. So that is the reality. And if you go to Indonesia, you get more of this syncretism. That's why you see, nak kata dia kiai, tapi kenapa kiai ni boleh minta isteri orang, bukan duit, kena transfer, isteri orang transfer kat dia. Sebab orang Indonesia terutama orang Madura, dia tak ada orang lain, manusia lain dia tak hormat, tapi kiai dia. Kiai dia kata bagi sama saya isteri kamu, bagi. Kalau orang lain ambil isteri, dagang kamu, bunuh, tetak kepala. So you're right, history is very important in understanding, and that probably answers Prof Abang tadi pasal the relevance of history. We need banyak orang kita ni terlupa history, terutama sekali ulama kita. That's why they can give fatwa saja. Ini haram, ini haram, ini haram. Tapi kenapa dalam keadaan tentu babi itu tidak haram, dia susah nak explain sebab dia dah prejudice dia dah ada stereotype bahawa babi itu haram dan sepanjang masa lah haram. When in fact the Chechen love to eat pork. Because why the Chechen is forever struggling dulu, they were forever struggling in the mountains, in the snow, tanpa makanan kecuali rabbit dan pigs, wild boars. So that's it.
Coming back to your inputs, Prof dengan Prof Abang, the role of scholars is so fundamental. We will go down to history. The ulama were the sort of the beacon, sort of the beacon. But they seem to have failed us nowadays, in the sense that they don't touch, or they don't dare to touch on fundamental issues. For instance, what is happening now to the Rohingyas? I have yet to hear any mufti or any religious figure, respected one, to even mention about what is happening, and give us some guidance how to deal with it. Kan? So, no, we are not facing problem with our kids, which seems to be happy-go-lucky and lack of reading and not interested in knowledge. But we are also facing our ulama, yang that was correctly mentioned by Dr. Yusuf Kardawi, di antara kelesuan ulama dan kejahilan umat. We may not call it indifference, but they are being important, if I may use that word. Our ulama is important, mandul from that aspect.
Important.
So now we are stuck in between the ummah who is disinterested, disenfranchised, and the ulama who is important. What is your comment to that?
What do we do?
We are stuck in between. We have an ummah who is very conscious, who wants to change, but we are stuck in between these two situations.
Yeah, it's a matter of role that they should play. But the situation actually already started when the French under Napoleon took over Egypt, invaded Egypt. And that was the beginning of the Muslim ulama, especially those at University Al-Azhar, to become subservient. Dia hanya melakukan tugas yang diminta oleh Napoleon. And Napoleon was a clever, very good scholar. He benefited from the ulama. He knows how to, he read the mind of the ulama at Al-Azhar. And finally, there was a symbiotic existence between him and Al-Azhar. That's why that was the beginning of the silence of the Muslim ulama. Ya, itulah tragedi dia bermula di situ. And until now, you see in Egypt, Al-Sisi took advantage of Al-Azhar. And any Muslim university cannot be better than Al-Azhar. Not even UIA, sorry. Although I worked for UIA for 4 years, I think I'm very disappointed. UIA can't even beat my former institute Cambridge in terms of what is the role of the church and what is the role of the state. Tak boleh bagi fatwa yang baik. Dia orang sudah bagi macam mana nak melaksanakan, macam mana nak menguruskan zakat. Ya, Cambridge and Oxford operate on zakat saja, on Baitul Mal saja. Dia orang tak ada harap bantuan kerajaan sangat. Dia zakat. Dia Baitul Mal endowment. Sorry. I'm lack of terms.
Endowment.
And then kita sini banyak tanah kita, tapi UIA masih minta duit sana sini. Ya, tak cukup duit. I don't know whether lampu gelap dia boleh pasang, keris boleh banner, dia buang ni. Semua lama. Tapi beli buku nak bayar gaji seorang profesor je saya pun tak mampu. Buang.
Tapi buat replika keris.
Replika saya kata, aku kena dengan Islam ni. Pakai keris ke? Sorry Marina, I don't like keris.
Question of priorities.
Exactly. That's why somebody said this, and I think it's fitting, because he said that our ummah ni, when nitty-gritty issues, non-issue, for example, Remember last time Cadbury, there was a contamination Cadbury.
Betul.
Due to traces, we are talking about traces.
Traces.
DNA. It become an uproar, and everybody make comments, and it's become like the issue of the day lah. So when somebody got killed,
Kalau di India boleh bunuh orang, isu-isu begini.
yes, and then a community is being persecuted,
Yeah.
brutally murdered.
But there is not much.
The ulama didn't say anything.
Yeah.
At least say something lah. At least show concern. That is the story stick about it.
Young people say something.
Masa.
I think that's
This was a guy you mentioned just now. Ilvi Sun.
Ni, this one.
Yang Buddhist ya.
Ni, this one, Teo An Siang.
I've
Sini?
I've read a few things about him in the papers.
right. If that would be all, maybe if Professor anything left to conclude or something, or
What I can say is there's a lot of work need to be done, and not to give up on our younger generation. They
I'm
still
about to give up. I'm about to give up.
At least we can start within our circle,
Yeah.
our families, and try to bring as much good as possible, and have a lot of faith in ourselves and also the community. The community can change. The only thing is you need to strive and you need to persevere. Inshallah, things will be for the better. Inshallah. Bila topik kita, Assalamualaikum.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So thank you Professor
Ya,
Dr.
semoga
Hafidzi.
berjaya untuk
Semua kita.
Inshallah. And I think that's a wrap for today's session, inshallah. So we learn important things. That is, I think, as for the summary pretty much there, that we have to start from ourselves to do something. Of course, it's a frustration to see what's happening in our society now. Those who are not contributing to the ummah are those who actually know, have the knowledge, have the ilmu and all, but they feel like me, just me, and we have issues with our ulama too. So inshallah we have better ulama in the future, inshallah.
Sure.
And this for the Rohingya cases, I see Dr. Madya, he's been saying a lot, and he's been doing something. So at least someone there, someone out there being doubt about it. And so inshallah let's be the change, inshallah. So wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.